Hey everyone, you're watching DeProgram or listening to DeProgram with me, Ted Rall, and John Kiriakou.
A blurry John Kiriakou. I don't know why I'm blurry. Sorry.
We don't know why. Yeah, maybe it's a camera thing, maybe it's an internet thing. It's not like you have enemies in the intelligence community, so it's not that.
Please. Yeah. It's not that. Could never be that.
Not at all. It's like how I found out that my phone was being tapped by the NYPD is the phone sucked. It was like my service was terrible. I kept calling Verizon and they kept coming around. And finally the guy told me, and he's like, yeah, you don't even rate a good tap. It's an old fashioned one. So it's draining the signal.
Oh my God.
It was a landline. I was just like, I've been meaning to pull the cord at some point. I'll go cell only, and that's what I decided to do.
Oh my God,
John! Just before we came on, you told me about some breaking news from news.
There's some breaking news from Sacramento. Let me find it. There it is. Get this: a Republican candidate for governor, a guy by the name of Kyle Langford, has a proposal. He says this is a message to undocumented female migrants. He says, we know where you are, but if you marry one of our California incels, which stands for involuntarily celibate, then you can stay. But if you don't, then, well, you're going back across. He says, this is my initiative to encourage family formation in the state of California, fostering healthy, stable young families, which is my #1 priority. So if you're a Mexican woman and you want to stay, by God, you marry an incel and you can stay. Nice country we're running here. Pretty incredible.
And this is how legit of a GOP gubernatorial candidate is this? I mean, of course, to the extent that anyone is a legit candidate running in California, where the GOP is basically dead statewide.
Yeah, the GOP is dead. He's an also ran. He's trying to break out of the pack of Republicans, none of whom have any prayer of winning. But it's this guy, Kyle Langford. It's a guy named Chad Bianco, who's the sheriff of Riverside County, a business consultant named Sharifa Hardy, a marketing guy, Brandon Jones, and Leo Zaki, the president of Zaki Farms. I mean, seriously, whoever heard of any of these people?
That's crazy. Yeah, nobody has. But I have questions about this incel proposal. Okay, so aside from the fact that basically, I don't know, is it officially sanctioned rape, or is it like, I guess it's sexual coercion, right?
Yeah. This seems to me to be, yes, at the very least, coercion. I don't know how anybody with a straight face could say such a thing. This just seems to be sexual violence of some sort.
And in all kidding aside, I mean, and there's lots of kidding to be done here. I have great sympathy for some incels. It's got to be absolutely a nightmare, honestly. It's got to be awful. And so, but I always, I'm like, I'm not sure, like, how this works. Like, for example, how do we certify? So when let's say a woman decides to take the governor-elect up on his office. Yeah. First of all, he's writing a check he can't cash because that's the deportations are federal.
I think he probably doesn't know that.
Yeah, he probably doesn't.
And you made a good point that we had a hearty laugh over, but it's actually a serious point. It's like, are we going to create an incel registration database? Do you carry a membership card in the California incels? I mean, how would this work?
And what's to prevent scamming? What's to prevent me from falling in love with a beautiful Latina migrant, and then I'm like, I'm an incel.
Yeah,
I have got paid in like forever. Wink,
right.
Wink.
Well, and that's the other thing is, who defines celibate? Is that, a month, a year, 5 years? I mean, what is that?
If you're horny enough, a couple hours, it could be like brutal.
Exactly. No,
I've been involuntarily celibate for the last hour, and I'm dying here.
And just to show you how crazy our politics have become, this was only reported in Newsweek and MSN. That's it. Nobody else even bothered to give it an inch or two of print space. Not even interested.
So, I'm really as a journalist myself, I can really argue both sides of this, right? Like, this is so outlandish. This is just clickbait. Let's not give it any oxygen. On the other hand, it's kind of like, it is a statement about when the fringes of the Republican Party are out here. I mean, the fringes go fringier when the mainstream goes fringier.
Because the mainstream moves. Exactly.
So it's still notable and
worth. But the question then is it cyclical? Does the center go back to the center, or are we going to establish our incel registry, and it's going to be like everybody's going to be cool with it?
Yeah, like in like a couple of weeks, we'll be looking back like, wow, remember when we were just joking about that? Now it's the law of the land.
I've got a great friend who a decade ago was the dean of the School of International Affairs at UC Santa Barbara. And we were joking about incels at dinner, right? And I said, how humiliating is it that you have this name to describe a group of people, but then the group of people that you're describing adopts the name as something that they're okay with. Like people say, yeah, I'm an incel. It's because it's being forced on me by society, whatever. And he said, oh, do you remember the incel that killed all those people at UC Santa Barbara? I said, yeah. He said, he was coming after me. I was his dean. What? He said, I hid under my desk for hours. And then finally the police called and said, you can come out now. We killed him. Wow. I was like, oh, that's not funny.
No.
That's not funny.
There's no humor there. Wow. So yeah, no, that's so interesting too. I mean, I was, as I said before, I was kind of thinking sex bots were going to be the solution to incels. I mean, it is true.
Why not?
I mean, it is actually really interesting, right? There's people who have low sexual currency, and it's kind of like, I mean, I've always thought it was kind of like in the same way that it's a little weird that whether you eat and have shelter is reliant on whether you have the good luck or not to find work. It's a little bit like, well, sex is a human need. And like, so it's a little bit strange that like, obviously you can't force, I guess that's changing, but you can't force anyone to have sex with you, right? That's for good reason, very good reason. Against the law, and has been for
crime
ever since crime started. But, at the same time, also if sex is a human need, is it a human right? And, do we need to have like a sex brigade that like, people are drafted and they have to go and service people who are unable to get, any sex on their own? Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, sex bots seems to solve the problem maybe in the future.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously when you have people going crazy and doing mass shootings, it is a societal problem. We can't just say like, sucks to be them.
You're absolutely right. But you know what, though? We have this puritanical history that runs through the whole history of our country where sex is dirty and mm-hmm. it should be kept in darkness and can't talk about it. How many incels are there in the Netherlands, let's say, where sex work is not criminalized?
Right.
If you've got 50 euros or 100 euros or 200, I have no idea. This is just what I've heard, right? I don't know. But
and it's not necessarily, and by the way, having talked to I used to talk to sex workers all the time because I drove a taxi. And so like I often had sex workers, going home after work. And I was curious as hell about their job, about their work. And they're very serious people to a woman, right? Basically it's like they have a goal, like save money, do this, save up as much as they can, and get out, right? And the thing is that they were most of their customers were married men or men in committed relationships who kind of just wanted a no strings attached, like completely transactional. No one's asking me how my day was. It's just boom. We're just doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly what sex workers are. That's the market mostly for what they're doing.
I think you're right. I've not met very many, but the ones that I've met have exactly that same plan. Now, of course, there are others who do sex work just because they're drug or alcohol dependent. They need money to spend on whatever their vice happens to be. But that's not the norm, especially in big cities.
And there's also weird exceptions too, like out on the fringes. I met at a magazine shoot a couple. They were a married couple, suburbanites, kids. They were porn actors, and they just loved it. They were being paid for what they like to do, and they had sex parties on the weekends. I'm like, do you guys not get enough? Really?
Yeah, that's an illness. I knew one sex worker, a guy, it was funny. He bragged that he was a successful porn actor. And then when I got to know him, the truth came out that he was not a successful porn actor. He just had a webcam on his camera, and he would charge people like $10 a month to watch him walk around his apartment naked.
Did people pay?
Yeah, he made a living. It was an actual living. He did it when he got out of the Navy. That's how I met him, because we were both stationed.
Was he great looking?
No, I mean he was a good looking guy, sure, but he wasn't like ripped or anything. He was just he was like 6'4", thin but not gross, and light skinned black guy. And I met him when I was stationed in Bahrain. He was stationed in Bahrain in the Navy, and we got to know each other at the Navy base, because I'd go there and buy groceries or get a salad or watch a movie or whatever, and he was hanging out there too. So we'd see each other and we would sit and hang out, and that's when he told me he was going into porn, and I was like, oh, I said, is that like that's a legit thing that you can, like, can you actually make it doing something like that? He says, oh yeah, I'm already famous. Well, it's like, no, you spent $50 on a webcam, when they were a novelty, remember?
Sure.
And he had this subscription service that he contracted with. They took, 3% or whatever it was. And then people would just have this recurring charge, this $10 charge on their credit cards. And as soon as he walked through his apartment door, he would just take off all of his clothes and walk around naked all night long.
I could do that. Is that not against the military rules though? Do they have?
You'd have to consider it a part-time job, right? When I was at the agency, and this was not specifically a CIA thing; it was a government thing. That if you wanted to have a part-time job, you had to get your either your boss or your HR office's approval,
Sure.
And they always said yes. You're going to work at the movie theater as an usher or whatever, just to make a couple extra bucks. But something like this, I don't know. Not for me.
My main reason for not doing it is I'd be so mortified if I got no subscribers. I would just be like,
or you find out like your cousin subscribed, or your parents' next door neighbor subscribed.
Right, that would be bad.
That's just too weird.
Yeah, no, that's I've always wondered about that sort of thing. Like, what happens when people find out? It's like, well,
yeah. Let me add one more bizarre news of the weird thing that I read today in the New York Times.
We'll get serious.
I try really hard not to pay any attention to anything that Kanye West says or does. I try hard.
It's a good life choice.
I couldn't avoid it today. It was like a train wreck, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. So Kanye was apparently up all night on Twitter, and he is fighting with Kim Kardashian over custody of their 4 children.
Oh boy.
And she has applied for full custody and for a cessation of parental rights for him. And it was because he said that, while there are some Jews that he loves, he also loves Hitler. That was one thing he said several times, most recently a couple of weeks ago. During the night, he also said, she's trying to take my kids. And I think it's because I had sex with my male cousin from when he was 6 to when he was 14. And people are like, whoa, wait a minute. What did you just say?
What?
And then he deleted it. And people are like, yeah, once you put something on the internet, yay, you can never delete it.
No, that's for sure.
And so now the media are beginning to pick it up, saying, we've been saying for a long time, this guy's disturbed. Oh, which was another thing he said. He hates it when people say he has mental illness, because he does not have mental illness. He said he was diagnosed as being bipolar, and that diagnosis was incorrect. He has autism. It's like, no. I know lots of people with autism. That's not you, buddy.
I'd say schizophrenia is probably closer to it, which is basically, certainly, if anyone's ever been bipolar, it's him.
Yeah. And one other little tidbit, one of my closest friends is Bruce Fine. Bruce is the eminent constitutional scholar, attorney here in Washington. So a couple of years ago, he called me and he said, do you know this fella Kanye West? And I said, sure, because Bruce wouldn't know. Bruce is 76 and he
awesome.
he reads Shakespeare every night. He's not paying attention to Kanye.
Good for him.
So I said, yeah, Bruce, I know him. He said, well, he asked me to be his campaign manager for a presidential run. I said, Bruce, don't do it. Don't do it. So Bruce went to New York for a meeting.
Another presidential run?
Another one. Bruce went to New York for a meeting and he came back and he's like, oh, no, I'm not doing this. He said, they're all nuts. He's nuts and he's surrounded by other people who are all nuts.
Yeah, because who else would want to be around him?
Yeah.
It's I mean, look, that is it's almost a case for, no pun intended, Minority Report, right? Like, Kanye West is a crime waiting to happen. We all know it's a bomb that's coming. Go off. We don't know. We all know it's coming, but we don't know what it's going to be. I mean, it's not like this guy is just going to keep living like this, and then X number of years from now he dies of old age. That's not happening.
No, it's like a zit, and it's gonna have to be squeezed sooner or later, and we're coming. It's showing itself. It's gonna need a good squeeze.
We need that online doctor, the lady,
right? Dr. Pimple Popper.
Squeezer. Yeah, the zit popper.
Yeah, she's all over.
That's a job. I would love that job, actually. Whenever I'm on the subway, if I see someone with like a big zit like on their back, I'm like, I want to get that. It's just so. But I'm weird too. If I see tags sticking out, I always want to poke them back in. Whatever. It's just something anal retentive disorder, I'm sure.
One other political note that I wanted to raise before we get serious. Politico is making a lot the last few weeks about Governor, is it JB, I think, or JB Pritzker?
Yes.
Of Illinois. Now, of course, he's a scion of the Pritzker family, which is worth billions and billions of dollars. Many billions of dollars.
Personally worth, I think, $300 million or something like that.
Yeah. His share of that family wealth is quite substantial. There was talk that he would run for president if Joe Biden were to have bowed out early on. And he didn't make the run, of course, because it didn't work out the way anybody thought it would. But
he's part of that triumvirate of governors, right? Like
that's right. Josh Shapiro, exactly.
And what's his name from Kentucky?
Yeah. Andy Bashir. So Pritzker gave a speech, which in any other situation, nobody would have paid any attention to. But you get this banner headline on Politico that he gave a fiery speech, anti-Trump in every breath, and he's staking his claim to the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination. Okay. That's fine, but it's 2025 and it's early 2025.
True.
And unless he loses 100 pounds, he needs to think about his health on a long and rigorous campaign that is going to have him zigzagging across the country. But anyway, the reason I'm even bringing this up is because we've talked about how the Democratic Party is flailing around right now. It has an approval rating in the 20s, which is the lowest since the advent of polls 100 years ago.
That's right.
They have no direction. They stand for nothing. Hakeem Jeffries yesterday. Oh, I wanted to smack the guy. Hakeem Jeffries yesterday announced that he is going to conduct a sit-in on the steps of the House of Representatives to protest the Republican budget proposal. It's like, I wanted to say, you are the House Minority Leader. You are short of the speakership by only 3 votes. And that's how you're going to influence the budget. Sitting on the steps of the Capitol. Like, well, you moron.
Remember that protest that AOC and all those guys did like a year or 2 years ago, where they pretended to be handcuffed as they were led away?
Yes.
It's so, the Democrats are so performative. I mean, the Pritzker speech was, I guess, notable simply because it was a Democrat saying we gotta kick ass and take names against Trump and the Republicans. Whoop-de-doo, right? I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah, because that's exactly what they should be doing. You don't even have to talk about it or announce it. Just do it.
Just do it. And the closest we had so far is Cory Booker, talking to an empty hall for 25 hours. And but basically, the Democrats, they don't seem to understand what resistance looks like. John, let me tell you what resistance looks like, and you're going to agree with me. That judge in Wisconsin who has just been arrested by the DOJ, by the FBI, right, for trying to sneak out an illegal immigrant who was being tried on unrelated domestic violence charges, and ICE showed up as they haunt all these courthouses all over the country. She took umbrage at that. She, like many other jurists, she thinks it's a bad idea to do that because then undocumented people won't show up to the courts, and even for minor matters. And
there's been Law and Order episodes about that.
I mean, I got to say honestly, like I'm advising seriously anyone who is at all concerned about their status, don't show up, don't respond to any kind of summons like this. I mean, people forget about World War II. In the Holocaust, we always think that like the victims were mostly dragged off by the Gestapo with their doors kicked in the middle of the night. And that obviously happened. But most people got a postcard in the mail and they were told, be at the train station, Monday morning.
That is exactly how the Greek Jews met their fate. They received a postcard in the mail saying, be at this square in the center of town on such and such a date. And then they were all just escorted, very nicely, escorted onto trains that went straight to Auschwitz.
So, and the people who were, who were disrespectful and said, fuck that noise, I'm not going, their descendants are still alive today, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's like, you just can't trust it at all. It's, I just thought, but I was like, this is resistance. Also, the governor of Wisconsin issued a directive supporting her and urging and basically giving instructions for how to not cooperate with ICE inside the court system. That's resistance. That's what resistance looks like. Is when you're, there. I thought like the New York Times editorial board got it wrong when they took they took ICE to task for photographing her arrest. That is the best family photo she'll ever have taken of her. It is honorable. It is beautiful. She held her head up high and she was right. And we should all be proud of her.
No court's going to convict her.
No,
not a chance. This was all for the TV cameras. And it's red meat to the MAGA base. They're loving it. I've seen, I'm gonna say at least a half a dozen clips of Rachel Maddow saying in 2023, nobody is above the law, talking about Donald Trump's trials. And then clips of Maddow, or next to clips of Maddow saying just a couple of weeks ago, you can't arrest a judge.
Right.
Yeah.
Or probably, and then
there,
I usually see those clips next to, the news about Hunter's pardon.
Right.
So
yeah. So it's red meat to the MAGA base. They're loving it, but no judge is going to convict this woman.
Democrat, but getting back to Pritzker, I think who's going to give red meat? The Democratic base is salivating for some red meat, and they're not getting any.
They're not getting any. This constant tacking to the center is just not working. Eleni Gunulakis, who's the lieutenant governor of California, announced day before yesterday that she's running for governor to replace Gavin Newsom. But Politico went on and on today about how all eyes are on Kamala Harris. No eyes. No eyes are on Kamala Harris. We had Kamala Harris. We didn't like her.
Right.
Nobody liked her. Even Democrats didn't like her. So nobody cares if Kamala Harris is thinking or not thinking of running for governor.
She's in, I want to put this in a really clear perspective, right? I mean, she would be a worse second-time candidate than Hillary Clinton would have been. I mean,
totally
she had
agree.
less going for her than Hillary Clinton did. And Hillary Clinton was unpleasant.
Yeah.
But she had more oomph. She was,
and as much as I dislike Hillary Clinton, and I genuinely and deeply dislike Hillary Clinton, she was motivating to a lot of people. Not to me, but she motivated a lot of people. Kamala Harris never motivated anybody.
No, I mean, literally 7 to 10 million people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 did not turn out for her in 2024. And Joe Biden was not a very exciting candidate.
No, he wasn't.
So
politics are starting already. And like we said on the last show, Ted, the Democrats just simply don't have a deep bench. They don't. And the Republicans do.
Would the Democrats, and do you think they would recognize a rising star if they had one? Because I don't, I wonder about that. Because they've had a bad habit of not doing that.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah. Well, 12 years ago, it was Obama. So, yes. Mm-hmm. Today, no. It's like the Democrats and the Republicans have switched sides in that for the Republicans, it was always, the nomination always went to the person whose turn it was. And I've used this as an example before. Nobody in America thought that Bob Dole could beat Bill Clinton in 1996. But it was his turn. He had been the Senate minority leader. He had been the 1976 vice presidential nominee. It was his turn. He was the good soldier. Same thing with John McCain. Nobody believed John McCain could beat Barack Obama in 2008, but it was his turn. He kept his mouth shut in the 2000 primary when it was denied him by George W. Bush. We'll just give it to him. We know we're going to lose. But the Democrats now have so rigged their system. You pointed out the other day, the Republicans don't have superdelegates. The Democrats have more than 1,200 superdelegates.
Right.
And so they did that so that there can't be an insurgent candidate like George McGovern. It just can't happen. The party muckety-mucks have too much authority. And so if there were a young, smart, brash, up-and-coming Democrat, he'd be told to wait his turn because now the Democrats are doing it.
Or is it AOC?
I'm going these waves on AOC. At first, I was so excited when she first got elected because she was such the genuine outsider. And then they slapped her down and told her toe the line, and she said, "Aye, aye, Captain." And she did what Pelosi told her to do. And now she's kind of, sort of, maybe trying to establish a position on the left, but not on Palestine.
No.
Not at all. So I don't trust her.
I think an older outsider Democrat, like say Bernie, who's not that great on Palestine, that slides by a little better than it does with someone young like AOC, because all the young Democrats are on Team Palestine here. Right?
Yes, yes, this is a serious issue.
This doesn't connect for them.
No, and the Democratic leadership is just pretending that it's not there. They're refusing to acknowledge, for example, that that the Democrats lost Michigan because they had no viable policy or program to support Palestinian human rights. Yeah,
and I mean, the AIPAC thing is still mysterious to me. I mean, yeah, I know they make a lot of campaign contributions. Yeah, I know Israel. It was a Truman who said famously that Israel is like having an aircraft carrier in the Middle East. But still, it's easy to imagine another world, right? Like where we don't care that much about Israel. I wouldn't cut them loose if I were U.S. president. I would say we're allies. I mean, but I'm not going to give you carte blanche to do whatever you want. No more settlements. Like,
yep.
I mean, but the point is, it's easy to imagine a world in which the Democratic Party just decides, yeah, we're just going to no, we don't care what AIPAC's going to do. AIPAC's going to AIPAC, and just think of all the additional votes they're going to get by cutting them loose.
Yeah.
I mean, not to mention from a foreign policy standpoint, Israel's not really that important, right? I mean,
it's not actually. It's not. No.
What do they bring to the table? I mean, I guess the alliance with Mossad is worth having, but it's not. I mean, but think about all the other closer relationships that we're foregoing as a result. The sum total of those has got to be more.
It's got to be. I told a podcaster earlier today. It was a podcast on the Middle East, and I said, my very first overseas tour, I was living in Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis asked us to deliver a message to the Israelis that the Saudis wanted to go into Gaza and build a port, an airport, and an electrical grid, and water desalination plants. And water desalination is very, very expensive, so you have to be able to. The Saudis are great at it, and the Emiratis. And so we delivered the message to the Israelis, and they said, absolutely, positively not. Not just no, but never, never. There was never any thought to economic development in Gaza. There was never any thought beyond keeping those people as slaves. And that's how it's been now for decades, generations.
Right. Well, I remember I was there right at the beginning of the first Intifada. And I remember even then, like that's peak Israeli-Palestinian relations, right?
Yes.
Right before. Peak. And even, okay, so here's the vision that the Israelis had was, so the Palestinians will be cheap labor. They'll cross, and that was already happening. They cross the border from their cantonment, their Bantustans. They come over here. They work for us at below market wages, and then we send them back. That they were always viewed as like cheap foreign labor, basically.
Absolutely.
And so that was the best. And it's all been downhill since then.
All downhill.
If they had economic development, they wouldn't need to cross that border to come and work for the Israelis.
That's right, if they had it. And back then, but now the settlements have so expanded, not just, of course, in that area around Gaza, but all through the West Bank, that it's likely not possible to go back. It looks like Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Yeah.
100 islands of Palestinians.
Just chopped up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually surprised it's not like I'm surprised there's not more resistance and more violence. It's just because the repression is so brutal.
That's exactly what it is.
I mean,
and what about this other hot spot we have, Ukraine? I mean, there's been a lot of killing the last couple of days, and then this famous, instantly famous photograph of Trump and Zelensky meeting in the Vatican. We don't really know what was said. Nobody has said what was said, but this picture is pretty powerful.
It is pretty powerful. So they're on two chairs that would be reminiscent to anyone who's watched the movie Conclave. They're in the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
Like off to the side a little bit. And
it's like Trump said, you guys mind if we take this room? We're going to need it for a couple hours.
That's it. And so, so what we do know is that Zelensky said that it was a productive meeting. He issued a X tweet that said that, showing proper deference to President Trump. And it seems like then afterwards, Trump issued a statement decrying Russia's latest strikes and saying I don't know if Russia's really serious about wanting peace. But while all this is still all going on, his emissary is off meeting at the Kremlin for 3 hours with President Putin. So Witkoff, right? So it looks, it's hard to say, right? This is Kremlinology, right? Like for real. And,
it is.
But my read is the Trump administration is going to have rapprochement with Russia, with or without peace in Ukraine. They're going to do business they're going to reopen, they're going to normalize relations, drop the sanctions, open for business, energy deal with Russia. And I think the White House views Ukraine as a side issue, a secondary issue. Like they'd like to fix it. They want the Nobel Prize that you, John, have been talking about Trump wanting. They want that, but they're not going to give up relations with the normalization with Russia to get it.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And there was one funny thing that Zelensky said afterwards, that Ukraine will never accept Russian ownership and control of Crimea. It's like, well, that's not what the proposal is. The proposal is that the U.S. will recognize Russian control of Crimea. The U.S. doesn't care what
this is Zelensky's way of pretending to his people that he resisted something.
That was exactly what I was thinking. That the tweet from Zelensky was not meant for us to read and say, oh, the Ukrainians are going to fight. It was meant for Ukrainians to read and say, oh, that doggone Trump, he's screwing us. But at least our leaders are on the right side.
And they have a very censored press there.
Yeah, they do. I think this is going to happen in one way or another. I'm a member of a listserv of former RT people, and they are all convinced that sanctions are going to be lifted, perhaps starting in the next 4 or 5 weeks. Now, what they base that on, I don't have the foggiest idea. I think a lot of it might be wishful thinking. And I also believe that it's Vladimir Putin and not Donald Trump who really has the cards in his hand. So we'll see. But I think Zelensky, I don't think the U.S. really is soliciting Zelensky's opinion on these issues.
No.
The terms have been presented to him. He's going to take them.
That's right. It's not even take it or leave it.
No.
It's like he has to
live with it. Yeah.
This is it. So, I got the sense, even the body language of the two men huddled over to talk to each other, you kind of got the sense just like this was maybe mostly a logistics conversation. Like, okay, so you're going to do this. I'm going to do that. You're going to say this. I'm going to say that. Okay, wait. Oh, but if you say this, then that. Oh, okay. Like that kind of conversation.
I think that's it. Yeah. And there's not a whole lot Zelensky can do about this. You can.
Now, one thing that's happening is I predict it, and I did predict this on one of my other shows when I said, that there would be some kind of Russian statement. I think you and I talked about it around May 8th because it's Victory in Europe Day, victory against in the Great Patriotic War against the fascists, right?
Yes.
And this is the Russians love symbolism.
Oh, they love it.
And they wanted to, and I know this is Putin's sly little way of tying, denazification in Ukraine to the victory against Nazi Germany. So 3-day unilateral Russian ceasefire goes into effect May 8th. VE Day for Americans.
VE Day. It is. They announced it this morning. Unilateral ceasefire.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because they're powerful enough that they can do things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Ukrainians will do. Zelensky's in a tough spot, right? Because the Ukrainian people, they're not stupid. They've got to know. His approval is sure.
Mm-hmm. How about this assassination of a Russian lieutenant general in Moscow the other day? They blew up a car bomb. Now another one. Now, this is obviously an act of terrorism, right? Because you're putting civilians at risk. And remember, the generally accepted definition of terrorism is is an attack made for political purposes, meant to instill terror in a civilian population. Well, if the guy's coming out of his apartment building, which is a civilian apartment building, and the bomb goes off and blows him to smithereens, that's an act of terrorism. You can't do stuff like that. You can't do stuff like that. And the Ukrainians did it, and then the Americans were, at least CNN and MSNBC were like, wow, the Ukrainians, man, they're really tough. They're committing an act of terrorism.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think that was about? Was it revenge for the missile strike against the playground?
Definitely. And they knew that the Ukrainians knew that they didn't have the wherewithal to launch a similar strike with drones on Russia, one that would be as impactful to the national psyche as the Russian attack. And so what's better than killing a top-ranking general?
It's still pretty, I mean, it is not unimpressive, right? I mean, considering Russia's border security,
exactly right.
The
counterintelligence ability.
Yeah. I mean, so basically, I mean, the Russians know they've got Ukrainian agents like all over,
operating freely in Moscow.
Yeah, that's got to freak them out.
It would sure bother me.
Unnerving.
Can you imagine if we were at war, let's say in Iraq, and right over here at Fort Myer, here in Arlington, Virginia, a car bomb went off and killed a general, and the Iraqis took credit. Oh my God! It would be like some kind of national catastrophe, and of course we would launch enough bombs to kill 10,000 people. But nobody's supposed to be really surprised that this happens in Moscow. Like it's go at them, go get them, Ukraine.
It still feels like the closing chapters of this conflict, though.
I think so too.
And
this ongoing set of talks between the United States and Iran is still ongoing, and by all accounts, positive. I mentioned last time we spoke, Ted, and I said it again this morning on another podcast. I stopped listening to statements coming out of the State Department relative to the talks with the Iranians. I've been listening to the Iranian statements because I find them to be more truthful and more visceral. And just as background, the U.S. and Iran met indirectly in Muscat 2.5 weeks ago. They were in the delegations were in separate conference rooms, and the Omani foreign minister was shuttling between the two conference rooms. And then they all took a picture at the end. Then the following Saturday, they met in Rome, again in two separate conference rooms with the Omani foreign minister shuttling again between the two rooms. And then they shook hands at the end, which was a major breakthrough, apparently. I said the other day that we shouldn't get our hopes up because in the Paris peace talks between the United States and North Vietnam, it took them 6 months to finally agree on the shape of the table for the negotiations. Seriously. So I was actually pleasantly surprised when technical talks began on Saturday, again in Muscat. Now, what technical talks are is you've got the negotiators, but the negotiators don't really understand the deep intricacies of the Iranian nuclear program or sanctions. So instead of having State Department negotiators doing all the talking, you have them just sort of repeating what experts from the CIA, the Department of Energy, DIA, the Department of the Treasury are saying. And the Iranians are doing the same thing, where their delegation, of course, has diplomats doing the talking, but behind the diplomats are the scientists and the professors and the technical experts. As soon as these talks finished, Foreign Minister Arakchi, the Iranian foreign minister, came out with a statement that was so positive, I thought maybe I was missing a part of it. Like maybe when I printed it, only the first half printed. But no, that wasn't it. There was no downside to these talks. He said that the Americans treated the Iranian delegation with respect. that the experts engaged each other freely and easily. And while we have a long way to go, he said, the road seems to be a clear one. So I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Like Nixon was the only one who could go to China, is Trump the only one who can make peace with the Iranians?
And would he be willing to go to Tehran?
Well, I would be, if I were Donald Trump, I'd be afraid of getting a missile through the center of my torso.
True.
But would he be willing to meet in Riyadh? He said the other day he wants to meet Ayatollah Khamenei. That's never going to happen. But I could see Pezeshkian going to Riyadh and meeting Trump there, or going to, say again?
Why would it not happen?
If they can't come to an agreement to lift sanctions. Now, interestingly enough, Pezeshkian said after the second meeting that the Americans have lifted their demand that the Iranians not work on a missile delivery system. So let's say that the Iranians have a nuclear weapon, which they don't. The CIA has been utterly, absolutely clear that the Iranians do not have a nuclear weapon. They've been 6 months away from a nuke for the last 20 years.
Right.
So one thing that they have started developing is a missile system to actually deliver the nuke onto Tel Aviv or wherever it would be fired. They don't have such a system. But the Americans have stopped objecting to their development of a system, instead deciding to focus on the actual development of the weapon itself. Now, Marco Rubio put his foot in his mouth over the weekend. I don't know if you happen to see this, but he said that the Iranians may not, what do you call it, where they spin it with a gyroscope, uranium.
A centrifuge.
Yeah, they may not create their own uranium, even if it's below weapons grade. And if they did, they would be the only country in the world that did that. Absolutely not true. France, Germany, Japan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia,
Israel.
Yeah. Right. So, no.
Pakistan.
Yeah. They buy it. Yeah. So anyway, the only downside to all of this, I've been very excited about this, but the only downside was after Arakchi's statement about the Americans treated us with respect, the analysts were great at the negotiations, everything looks good. Trump said from Rome that the talks were a success so far. It's still early. I really want there to be an agreement. If there's not an agreement, it's going to be very bad for Iran because we're going to bomb them back into the Stone Age. It's like, why do you say stupid stuff like that?
He always does.
Yeah, he always does. Just let the diplomats do their thing and just shut up about it.
Honestly, he's like, it's our first realtor president.
Oh, so yeah, right.
Right. I sold my apartment in years ago, and it was on the top floor of the building. And I remember talking to my broker, and she said, "Oh, it's going to be very hard to sell your apartment because it's on the top floor." And I said, "I thought the higher floor was more desirable, and there's no one, there's no upstairs neighbor, so you don't hear anyone walking above you." She goes, "Oh, no, people, they don't want to take the elevator up. They want to just walk in." That doesn't sound right to me.
That's
and then we had the sale, and then at the close, I met the buyer. And so the buyer said, "Oh, so your broker emphasized how it was on a high floor with no upstairs neighbor, highly desirable." And she had been threatening them, like, "This is a really good deal. If you don't do it, like this, they're gonna go with someone else. You got to get it now." Meanwhile, she was threatening me and my ex-wife and saying, the same thing. It's the realtor way, right? Like, basically they just say whatever in order, and they use a lot of bullying and bluster to close the deal, to get the two sides together. I'm convinced that's what Trump does in like Russia and Ukraine. It's like it's like it's
right.
what he always does. He yells at both sides, like, "Come on, you crazy knuckleheads, get together! You know, make a deal, sign."
I think you're exactly right. Yeah, I think you're.
It's ridiculous.
Right. You know, Ted,
and there was the Iranians. It's scary because because the Iranians, they're the kind of people who don't appreciate that kind of shit.
I wanted to ask your opinion on something too. Over the weekend, there was a massive explosion at Bandar Abbas, the port on the Persian Gulf, the Iranian port. It's Iran's major port, and it's a port that has been identified as the near future location of a major Indian transshipment point. So the Indians are investing billions of dollars to upgrade the port, and they're going to use that as sort of a way station for Indian imports and exports. This explosion was absolutely gigantic. It was catastrophic. It killed dozens of people. It injured hundreds of people. The Iranians said it was an explosion of jet fuel, which had just been offloaded. No. This had Mossad written all over it. And what the exiled, I shouldn't say exiled, because they're not really exiled, the diaspora Iranian blogosphere said all weekend that the Israelis are so upset that Donald Trump turned his back on them and elected to engage the Iranians in talks that they are doing anything to try to scuttle these talks.
And the Iranians are not being played because the Iranians are not blaming Mossad or Israel.
And you know, the funny thing is,
it's not terrorism. It's just one of those things, improperly stored chemicals. Like
that they said, that's what they said. Look, this happened before. It happened in Beirut. It's not terrorism. Everybody needs to calm down. It wasn't the Israelis. Well, every member of the Iranian public believes it's the Israelis. But this goes to show you how serious the Iranians are in their desire for these talks with the United States to succeed. They will not be duped. Too. Very smart.
And it's also really smart because behind the scenes, the Iranians can tell their American counterparts, listen, we know what your Israeli buddies did, but we're letting it go because we are so serious.
Yep. The Israelis have a remarkable network of spies and saboteurs inside Iran. It is remarkable. Whether the operation is to kill an Iranian scientist or to kill a Palestinian activist or negotiator or to blow up the biggest port in the country, they can do anything they want.
How do they recruit them? Is it money? I mean, it's not ideology. It can't be.
There's still listen, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not making any judgments here.
Right.
Okay? This is just what Iranians have told me. And I have no idea if it's true, but there is still a sizable Iranian Jewish community that is looked upon sort of askance when it comes to some of these national security issues. I have no idea if that is where the problem happens to lie. I am told, though, that oftentimes members of that community are used as access agents to get the Israelis access to people who can and are willing to carry out these kinds of operations. You know, on a lot of time, an agent for a foreign intelligence service doesn't even realize he's been recruited. The agent doesn't even realize that he's providing information to a hostile or to a foreign intelligence service. And this may be one of those situations.
We have a viewer comment, a question for you. John, what's your view on the Taliban working alongside America regarding counterterrorism against ISIS?
Yeah, you see, it's one of those situations where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. On the one hand, sure, I can see it. You have to pick your enemies, and ISIS is worse than the Taliban in a lot of ways. I mean, ISIS is even killing members of the Taliban for not being fundamentalist enough. But then at the same time, you find yourself getting into bed with, people like Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War, or Al-Qaeda in Syria, or the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 1980s and 90s that led to both the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So this is like working with a greased pig. It's just hard to really get your hands on.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see what happens. I'm like you. I'm not as optimistic. I mean, the Iran thing is just it's a steeper hill to climb than the Russia thing.
Yeah,
I think Russia's
definitely.
Russia to me is like, I would bet everything I own on that. Like, 95% chance this is going to be fine.
Because we get a lot out of it. We get a lot economically out of just having this thing go away.
Yeah. And it's a good thing. Iran, I hope it happens. It's like 40 years in the making. Needs to happen.
Yeah, total, 46 years.
Ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about domestic politics. Some polling is out. Republicans, not surprisingly, are catching some shit from the voters. Democrats are still in the toilet. It's not to their benefit. They're 27%.
This support is not shifting to Democrats at all.
No, it's just basically like, oh, we hate all of you. That's it.
Yeah.
And so basically, it looks like the tariffs have landed like a wet balloon. And Elon Musk's, Doge antics, people are done with. They're tired of. They can't stand it. So I don't know. And it's only 3 months into this administration. I mean, if you're Donald Trump, are you worried? I mean, is this going to imperil your run for a third term?
Right. I don't think he's worried. I don't think he cares. I really don't. I think he's much more concerned about legacy issues like Russia, Iran, and getting his big tax bill passed. I don't think he really cares about the polls right now because he can bully his way through the Senate and can cajole his way through the House.
And my take is that he's doing this, that he knows correctly, and I would be advising him accordingly, that basically it's now or never, like the Roy Orbison song goes, right? It's like, you can get a lot done the first year of your presidency at most. Next year's an election year, ain't nothing getting done. Yeah, so whatever he's going to do, it's now.
Congress came back to Washington today, right? They've been on vacation, the Easter break. And so they are back in session today for the first time in a couple of weeks. And there is no agenda in the House of Representatives. There's no agenda because they can't figure out what to do. And the Democrats, like I said earlier, are so brainless that rather than trying to offer up amendments to this giant tax bill, are deciding to instead sit on the front steps of the House as a silent protest. I don't know. It's inexplicable.
What would you do instead if you were the king of the DNC? What would you tell them to do?
Offer hundreds of amendments just to slow down the whole process and throw a wrench into it, because the Democrats are normally much better at following their leaders' instructions than the Republicans are. And all you have to do is peel off 3 Republicans, 3 out of 225 to doom the bill. Because the Democrats, if Hakeem Jeffries says vote no, every single Democrat will vote no. And all you have to do is just pull 3 Republicans. That's it. Instead, they're outside, playing with themselves.
Yeah, what do you think that's about? Like, why don't they just do that?
They have no
worried about being
ideas
accused of being obstructionist, or
I don't think so. I think that they just simply don't have any ideas. They're in disarray. I remember in college, one of my political science professors, a guy who had worked in the Carter administration, young guy, he said, the problem for the out of power party is that it doesn't have a leader. And I remember him saying, who's the leader of the Democratic Party right now? Is it Jimmy Carter? No, because Jimmy Carter's not the president anymore. Is it, I forget who was the Speaker of the, or not Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader at the time, is Democratic majority in the Senate. He's like, no, because they only have 51 seats.
Someone like that.
No, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House. It was the same argument there. It was before Mitchell.
Mm.
And after the guy from Montana who became the ambassador to Japan. I can't remember anymore. I'll Google it while I'm. So Senate Majority Leader in 1990 or 82. 1982 was Robert Byrd.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was Robert Byrd.
The Lion of West Virginia.
How could I have forgotten that? He's buried a mile from my house. So, so he said, you've got the head of the DNC saying he's in charge. You got Robert Byrd saying he's in charge. You have Tip O'Neill saying he's in charge, and Jimmy Carter saying, hey, I should be in charge because I was the party's nominee and I was the president. Well, for the Republicans, who was in charge? Ronald Reagan was in charge. And the Democrats find themselves in that position now. I don't even know who the head of the DNC is right now. It's the guy from North Carolina. I don't remember his name. It's not Chuck Schumer.
No,
because he's a minority leader. It's not Hakeem Jeffries. He's a minority leader.
DNC has that child.
Yeah, David Hogg or David Hogg. Yeah, it's not Joe Biden. He doesn't even know that he used to be president, and it's not Kamala Harris. So it's just chaos over there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the lack of leadership thing. It's structural.
Yeah, it's structural. In the meantime, they're worried about stacking the 2028 convention so that they, so that the party leadership can stay in charge.
That's all they care about. They care about that a lot more than they care about winning. I don't have high hopes for them for the midterms next year, but of course it's an eternity between now and then. But yeah, I agree with you. There's absolutely no possible chance that the Democrats can win control of the Senate in 2 years. Right. Absolutely out of the question. Can't happen. There's a possibility that if people are really pissed off at Trump, the Democrats can flip the 3 seats they need to take control of the House. That they could do that in New York State. Or a depression or something.
Sure. But no, nothing's going to change. You know, Trump is going to be in charge for 4 years. We just have to live with the idea.
Unless the guy dies.
But so, at 6'3", 220, he's in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I read the other day he's actually 6 feet, 268. So take your pick.
I asked AI how long he was likely to live.
What did it say?
They said he could be 90. I'm like, what? It's because he has good genes. Is based how
he
long
has longevity. Yeah, he's got longevity in his family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well. So, sorry, Democrats. So in the meantime, that means more deportations.
Yeah, lots, including of American citizens, apparently.
Yes. So I'm surprised at how few people seem really up in arms about this. And this is, if there's anybody who ever doubts that slippery slope arguments are real, has to watch the deportation thing, right? So now we're coming to a 2, a 4, and a 7-year-old child, at least, all American citizens who've just been deported with their mothers back to at least Honduras was one of the countries. In at least one case, the father was here in the United States and went to a federal judge, and the federal judge it's weird. It's a mixed message. He's angry, but he's not quick. He's scheduled a hearing for May 16th to look into this. Meanwhile, I keep thinking about the kidnapping aspect. If you had divorced parents or non-divorced parents, if one parent takes their child out of the country, they have to have written permission from the other parent. I had to do this when I took my kid overseas. So that's been ever since that really famous case of the lady who married the Jordanian guy, and then he took their kid to Jordan, and it became they were made for TV movies about it, on Lifetime TV. It's my baby, the such and such story. Yeah. It's so everyone knows this is kid. So the father is saying, look, I don't want this kid to leave the country. And meanwhile, there's a lot of evidence that says that the wife was basically not, or the mother wasn't given any choice. I mean, this sort of brings up a whole raft of issues, right? I mean, the way this works, the entrapment, ICE says, or BCE says, come for your regularly scheduled appointment. Then bam, oh, we lied, you're under arrest.
Yep.
And it's like, well, that's not going to work forever. People are going to stop doing that. And then it's like, there's no time to get your affairs in order. You're in shackles. You're on your way. Oh, you're with your kid. Take your kid with you, or we'll put them in we'll put them into the foster care system. Well, obviously, no one's going to do that. They'll say, "I'll take my kid with me." It's all under duress. This one woman, she was on the phone with her partner, and he was trying to give her the name and contact information for an attorney. ICE hung up terminated the call, so she couldn't talk. And then, so it's all a rush job. Like, get them out. And then it's like it's de facto, it's the facts on the ground. Oh, well, just like with the El Salvador guy, it's like too late to do anything. That's their game.
And these U.S. citizen babies that you're talking about there on the Chiron, these children are 2, 4, and 7 years old. And one of them has
dying of cancer.
Stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
Just and no thrown meds. Out. And no meds. That's right. That's right.
So that's lovely. That's the kind of country we are now.
Yeah.
And it's not the top story in the news.
No. People are becoming desensitized, I think, to a lot of these events, which is exactly what the White House wants to happen.
That's the plan. Mm-hmm. If we do multiple things a day, people will just, they just go into, a learned helplessness posture, and they just don't respond anymore. It's just.
That's right.
That this is where opposition leadership would be essential.
Yes.
I think about James Carville and like creating the war room in 1992 and saying, we will respond, unlike Dukakis in 88.
Right.
Anytime Republicans shoot something at us, or there's a bimbo eruption with Bill or whatever, we will immediately address it and counteract it like boom. There's no anti-Trump war room.
That's right. What James Carville did was to mandate that every Republican attack be responded to within 2 hours. And that just hadn't been done before. Mm-hmm. And it worked. That and sticking to the issue of the economy.
So how come nobody does that anymore?
No, because you don't want to offend the trans community. You don't want to offend the Jewish community. You don't want to offend these people or offend those people. Next thing you know, the Democratic Party is not viable.
What's next? So they are going to deport a U.S. citizen. They are going to.
Oh yeah.
Like an adult U.S. citizen.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's going to happen.
Yep.
I mean, Trump's already talked about it. He calls them the homegrowns.
The homegrowns. Yes, the homegrowns. He even wants to send to this super prison in El Salvador. It's like, dude, you've never heard. Say again?
I dib top bunk.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be like the highlight of your day. Oh, my God. Yeah. Oh, my God.
I mean, it's amazing, too, like the photos of these guys all piled to the ceiling and all jammed together. Obviously they can't all lie down at the same time. I mean, it is reminiscent of the Auschwitz photos.
I have to interrupt again, too. It just occurred to me. The big arrest here in Washington. They found the guy who stole Kristi Noem's purse.
Yes.
And this idiot is an undocumented immigrant. And not only did they grab him over here in some flea bag motel on George Avenue, which is a shithole anyway, They arrested a co-conspirator in Florida, and in a very unusual move, announced that both will be deported, but not before being prosecuted. And because the value of what was stolen is more than $2,000, she had $3,000 in cash plus the value of everything else that was in. It's a felony. It's a class 2 felony. So we're talking like real time that these guys could get. We're talking 5-10 years.
I'm a little skeptical about this whole narrative. It's too convenient to me.
Well, let me ask you.
Yeah.
If this guy is just some schlub off the street, how did he get into this 4-star restaurant and not be noticed? Reach under Kirsty Noem's chair, steal her purse, walk out, and nobody paid any attention. This is supposed to be such an amazing, like it's this high-level burger place called Capital Burger. People in suits and the whole 9 yards, and this guy just comes in off the street and steals her purse? Come on. Really?
And Christy's so deep in conversation. Everyone's rapt, hanging on her every word. Nobody notices him. And then what's with the co-conspirator in another state? What co-conspirator? It's a purse snatching.
It's
not a RICO case. It's a purse snatching.
These guys have been a 2-man crime wave, if you believe what the Department of Homeland Security is saying, that they've been stealing from restaurants and motels for months, and they've cracked this crime wave, and these guys are going to pay the price. It's like, I don't know.
Part 5, if I heard such a sketchy.
Yeah, I'm going to need some convincing.
Yeah. I mean, like, maybe. It's like, of course it was an illegal immigrant.
Of course.
Who else would it be?
Because it couldn't possibly be a white guy who would actually blend in a restaurant like this, right? Couldn't possibly be a white man who stole her purse.
No, not at all. Well, apparently there's video footage.
Yeah.
So, and video footage is much better than it used to be. Now, that is, yeah, Kristi Noem. Like, God, what an idiot. Well, it's weird. How long? Let's handicap it. How long until the first U.S. adult citizen is deported?
I think we're within the next. Yeah, we're within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, I think it's going to happen soon. And don't forget that behind all the curtains, it's Stephen Miller who's doing this. This is Stephen Miller's policy that he has quietly and quickly implemented. And he stopped giving interviews, so his name's not out there anymore. But this is Stephen Miller doing this. He's a dangerous son of a gun.
Yeah, he really is. And and the press is just, they can't even play catch up. I mean, we're just, it's Donald Trump's world. We're just living in it.
That is right. That is
well,
right.
John,
I'm deprogrammed.
We will be back Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time. So with more deprogramming, and God knows what will happen between now and then. So do tune in.
See you later.
Bye, John. Bye, everyone.